It's Dee Dee on the spot.
Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. We greatly appreciate it. We have Shannon Seeley here on the podcast. You can follow her on Instagram at ShanIsFierce. She's a 6-time NBC National Women's Physique Division competitor, she's a Titan nutrition athlete, Team War Room, and most importantly, she's been recently married. Before we get started on the fitness aspect, could you give us a little bit of a backstory on how you and your husband met?
All right. Well, it's kind of a typical social media story. We actually met on Instagram. Oh. He was one of the creepers that slid into my direct messages, and I do have a soft heart for those that serve in the military, and noticed he was in uniform, so I always try to respect that. And he actually messaged me and said, I noticed that you're dating someone, I'm dating someone, but if we ever go single, he's like, I'm gonna take you out on a date and propose to you. And he was respectful of that for 8 months. He just followed me on Instagram, and then when I broke up with my boyfriend, he asked me on a date, and like 3 weeks later we went on our first date.
Wow. So, guys, I don't want to promote it too much out there, but that is one of the rare cases where messaging these people on Instagram works. So, like I say, do it, but make sure to be nice and respectful, and just to let you know, that is like winning the lottery that this guy just did, okay? So don't expect it to happen. But so where'd you guys go for your first date?
So he was stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas, and I'm here over in Detroit. So we both drove 7 hours to Lincoln, Illinois, the birthplace of Abraham Lincoln, and we spent our first date there. And I was in off season, so we went out for Mexican food.
Okay, that's dedication right there, driving 7 hours both ways for you guys. What was the big connection when you guys started out? Was it just that you guys had similar interests? What was the big spark that allowed you to drive 7 hours to meet him? Because like I would have trouble driving like 2 hours to meet someone.
So, well, we both had an interest. It's very hard for me as a female to find men who like muscle women. Mm-hmm. So when he showed an interest in me, I was like, all right, we started talking to him. I made him like Skype me, so I knew it was him. It wasn't a catfish or anything like that. And after a while, we just kind of connected, and I was like, you know what? I got out of a bad breakup. I just graduated from college. I was like, what the hell? I'm just going to go on this date, see where it leads. And then we just hit it off. And from there, we just made the long distance work for about 2 months before we just moved in together.
So when did he propose to you, and how did he do it?
So he proposed to me. We were dating for 5 months, and he proposed to me on Christmas Day after all the gifts were unwrapped. You know, the cliche. It wasn't anything like super like out of the ordinary, but I was surprised at that time frame because we were only together for about 5 months. So he proposed, and I'm a dad's girl. I love my dad, so we're really close. So when he proposed, I kind of like looked over at my dad, like to make sure like it was okay. And he's like, yeah. So, and then we got engaged, and then we were engaged for 2 years, just to be safe. I wanted a long engagement to make sure things were going to work out.
Yeah, that is very smart. So you just recently had your wedding a week or two ago. What was that experience like?
So we had a very small wedding, just very personal, friends and family, like 40 people. It was probably the most emotional that I've ever been in my life. I have like ugly wedding pictures, I think, because I'm like bawling my eyes out down the aisle, and he's bawling his eyes out while he's coming up. But it's like an ugly cry where I'm like shaking. I'm like, so like I like told my photographer, I was like, just don't even send me the ones that I like have my like mouth open. But you know, it was nice. I tell people, I'm like, just do small weddings. Like it saves you so much money. It's just, you know, these weddings get ridiculous. I was a wedding planner for a long time, and people are throwing $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 on these weddings. It's not worth it. It's a down payment on a house instead. So, you know, that's what we did.
And plus, once you get past probably like 30 or 40 people, those are people that like you're not really like super good friends with anyway or family with. So it's like,
right.
Yeah, I don't get that anyway. Going now to like your fitness journey, what inspired you to adapt a more healthy and fit lifestyle?
So actually, I was a competitive runner before I was a bodybuilder. So I was a competitive runner all the way through high school, a little bit in college. And what happened was my senior year of high school, I actually broke my leg, like completely broke it, shattered it, and really kind of lost a couple of scholarships to that because I couldn't run. And so tried to run in college, and to strengthen it, they said I really need to put muscle back on because it had atrophied so bad. So took it up in the gym, and I realized that I could put on muscle really fast. And then, you know, someone mentioned to me, you know, you should look up Dana Lynn Bailey. You kind of look like her and remind me of her. Fell in love with her physique, and that was it. And I've been on the stage ever since.
That's awesome. So were you always sort of, one thing that I found from all of our guests that we have on here, especially the girls that are really muscular, is that they sort of already had that framework genetically when they were growing up. Did you have that framework when you were a kid?
Yes. Even as a competitive runner, and I still was pretty light as a competitive runner. I was, I don't know, like 115 pounds running, but I always had like the biceps and like the booty. Everything was just so thick in me. And, so I was like, all right, I'm going to embrace it. I never thought I would be a competitive bodybuilder, but after kind of like looking how like naturally I just flowed right into it, I just think it's a perfect fit for me.
What was the hardest thing for you when you were starting out? Was it the constant working out or was it the nutrition?
So I think like many of us that start into it, we're really not sure the direction to go. So the nutrition was actually the easiest for me at first because I was with a trainer who put me on a macro counting diet. So for me, I thought that was how you dieted, was just counting your macros. So I would eat Reese's Cups and, cereal and all this. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm looking lean and I'm shredding up because I'm following my macros. And then when I actually worked with a real coach, you're like, what the hell are you doing? You need to follow an actual like bodybuilding diet. It does get tough, but I'm a person who likes routine. So I cannot see myself eating any other way. Once I'm adjusted to it, like now, even on season, off season, I have a very strict, like regimented diet that I follow.
Mm-hmm. So when you were starting out, was there a certain moment or was there just a lot of people that were just pressuring you to say like, hey, you should really compete and do this? Or what time frame was it like for when you started working out to when you decided like, hey, I look really good now, I could maybe compete?
So I don't think I ever thought like, oh my gosh, I look so good, I want to step on stage. But when I was 18, I'm 26 now, when I was 18, I started prepping for my first show. And I just did it because I wanted to just try it out. I was like, you know what? I've been in the gym. I see these competitors doing it. For the hell of it, I just want to step on stage, say that I did it, and then, go on my merry way. And people kept saying, the minute you step on stage, it's going to be in your blood. You're going to become addicted to it. You're going to love it. And after my first show, it was absolutely true. Like, I just could not get out of the lifestyle.
I'm just amazed, 26, because most people don't realize with female bodybuilding, you can do this sport well into your 50s and 60s, so you are like super, super young in this, and if you already look like that at 26, I was like, oh my god, what's she going to look like in like 10 years? Good god. So when you were, obviously you adjusted really, really well early on, but did you find that you struggled a little bit after you got your beginner gains? And I like to explain every podcast what they are, in case this is the first one people are watching. Beginner gains, basically, when you start working out, your body isn't used to that type of training that much, so it adjusts really, really fast, really quick, but then eventually you don't get that same progress that you got early on. You still make gains, but it's not as quick. Did you find that difficult when that happened?
I think the most difficult part for me was noticing like, and most of my followers know, and for those who don't know this podcast, I'm a recovering bulimic. So I've struggled with an eating disorder for 10 years. So having that scale go up and having to put size on and knowing your muscles are getting bigger was very mentally like draining for me for the first year. But and the hard part is yeah, your jeans don't fit, or you start learning that your body's not going to fit into like normal female size clothes anymore. And that probably was the hardest. I think my first show I did was like 2013, 2012, something like that. I didn't compete again for about a year and a half because I was still really adjusting to like the weight gain, and it really was, it does take a mental toll. And until you can get over that mental toll and accept that you're going to have on season, off season, putting on weight, losing weight, the sport's not going to work for you unless you can accept it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. So what was your first prep like? Was it just a huge shock to your system? I mean, most people nutrition-wise, they aren't prepared for that. Were you a little more prepared, or was it just a complete shock to your system?
It was actually it was a complete shock because as a competitive runner, I was used to eating whatever I wanted and not putting on the weight. So when I can't run when I'm in prep because I drop too much muscle. So when I had to stop running and go to different cardio and realize that I could not eat the same, and I think, like I said before, I was on a macro diet with my first coach. He wasn't really a bodybuilding coach. I didn't know that at the time. So it was a huge, I noticed just changing my eating habits up, though. I leaned out so fast and I was like, oh my gosh, like I have a six pack. Oh my gosh, like I have cuts. So it was, my body responded very well to that. But again, it was not like a normal bodybuilding diet. So it was kind of like somebody just counting their macros and like losing weight. So when I first actually did like a real bodybuilding diet, I put on the weight really fast and the size really fast that, then we discovered I'm carb sensitive. So I have really low carbs all the time because it's the only way to keep my body at a good composition level.
Oh, Yeah, I've never heard about that thing, so that's actually really interesting. But one of the things that I love to talk about is when it comes to, especially, well, you were lucky because you had a trainer, but did you still have, I like to say, like, if you're in a gym with 100 people and you ask 100 people how to do a certain exercise or what's best for them, you're going to get 100 different answers. So was it hard for you starting out to find out what was best for you, knowing that everyone else is going to have their own opinion on a certain way to do things?
It was very hard, and I had to personally, like, I tried so many different types of training where I just did, hypertrophy type training, and then I would just do like upper body days and lower body days, and then single like muscle isolation days. I personally experimented with that myself to kind of see how my body would react, and I am one of those people that just train a single muscle group every time, and I feel that works best for me. But every person is different, and that's the problem. It's my career, I'm a personal trainer, so I have to see this all the time to see what's going to work best for every individual. And what may work for someone may not work for the other. So that's why when someone goes to the gym and asks these questions, you get 70 million different answers because it may work for them where it's not going to work for the other person.
Absolutely, and that's a huge struggle that we'll talk about a little bit later on when we get to the personal training aspect. But what was it like the first time when you put that tan on for the first time and you saw everything really pop out? Like, people have always told me, they're like, "Oh my God, it's amazing that I had muscles I never knew that I had," and it was just a strange experience. What was that like the first time for you?
So you don't realize how dark you are when you're tanning with everyone because everyone's tan, and then when you go out and take pictures with your family and everything, you're like, oh my goodness, like you just look ridiculous. Like, you go after your show or between shows, you're running to the store and people are staring at you being like, whoa, she really fake tans. So it was kind of a shock. And at the same time, is for those who don't compete, they separate the genders, but males and females get spray tan naked in a room with each other. So you're completely naked. So if you're not like confident about your body, like that was a huge shock for me. I went into a room ages, 16 to, 60, and we're all completely naked, spraying our body. And you're just trying not to stare at everyone, and you're really insecure about how everything looks. And I think that was more of the shock than the actual color itself, was just like, because nobody prepares you for that. Like, hey, you have to go in a room completely naked. And so that was the biggest.
Yeah. That would definitely be a weird thing to do. So when you were on stage, I love to ask this question too. We ask a lot for the bands, like what it's like for them performing live. But what's it like for you, or what was it like for you your first time, and how did it evolve? Like going on stage and just showing off, all that hard work. Was it sort of a big mindset thing that you had to have because you might have been nervous? I mean, because you're in a two-piece basically, and that's hard for just anyone. I mean, if you looked at the general population, you'd probably get like 10% or less people would be able to do something like that. So was that hard for you mentally to sort of deal with that, or was it just to a point where you were like, hey, I worked my tail off, I'm going to go out there and just show it off?
So I do remember this, my first show, I was extremely nervous because I had never been in such a large crowd. And the biggest thing is when you're on stage, you have to learn certain poses that are mandatory poses for on stage. And if you don't hit your mandatory poses and don't show off that muscle that the judges are trying to see, you've ruined your entire, like all your hard work. So my main thing is I worked with a posing coach at the time, trying to get my poses. And you really, when you go on stage, though, you've worked so hard. My first time, I blanked. I could not remember anything. You just kind of like, I was like peeking over the competitors to like make sure like I was doing my poses right. And it's more like nerves, like shaking. I will say my first show, I was a mess. It was shaky. It was, but you learn from it. And people are always like, how do you step on stage with all these people in the audience? Honestly, you don't see them. The lights are so bright when you're on stage. All you can see is like these beams of light shining down on you, and maybe you can see like 3 of the judges in front of you, but you really can't see the audience. So it definitely was a huge relief for me when you can't see the audience. But now as I progress in the sport and done, dozens and dozens of shows, it's very comfortable for me. It's just it's like another posing practice for me. You just step on stage, follow directions, and go.
What was your experience like when you started out with the posing? Because most people don't realize that's probably, for some people, that's the hardest thing, just because when you're just doing, like, let's say like a front double, or you're doing just a back pose or abs pose, you're not just flexing that stuff. You have to flex everything else in your body. Like everything else has to be flexing and perfectly. Was that a struggle for you? And is it just something that a lot of people just like to say, it's just practice, practice, practice? Is that something that you struggled with?
It was, because you realize that you don't have certain muscle control that you have to learn to get muscle control. Like, okay, like I didn't know how to flare my lats when I first competed. So like my lat poses were terrible. And you realize that you have to learn and develop certain muscle control for muscles that you normally as a normal individual would not have to ever flex. So it definitely is a huge challenge. And unless you get a proper coach that's going to teach you how to like squeeze this leg to activate this muscle, it is a lot of work, and you always can improve. There's always, every show my posing improves. I work with a really renowned posing coach now that helps me out, but it's one thing, it's hit or miss. If your posing's not on point, it can make or break you for a show.
Mm-hmm. And I love to ask this as well. When people, don't realize that when you compete for a show, you've manipulated your body through all the dieting, through all of the hard work working out. You're not going to look like that forever. I mean, that look is going to last you for maybe a few days afterwards. How do you deal with that mentally, knowing that, like, this is the best I'm going to look for probably a while, for maybe at least a few months or maybe even a year? How do you deal with that mentally, knowing that you are going to put back on weight and you will not look that good for that long?
So I will say, in every year, it's always a struggle. We call it post-show blues. It's, you have to accept that your body is literally in a dying state. I tell people, if you maintain that exact depletion state for probably more than 72 hours, you probably would die or end up in the hospital, because you are just so, almost like, everything is just dead. So knowing that, it's kind of a struggle. I just try to embrace that moment. Usually during my peak week and post week for my shows is where I'm really lined up. I try to book as many like photo shoots that I can with, definitely some of my sponsors, get all those out of the way, and then, just kind of slowly embrace it. Now, if you have a proper diet and nutrition coach, they will reverse diet you back to a certain state that's maybe a little bit more comfortable. The problem is, if you get a rebound where you're not working with a coach, you can really ruin your metabolism. I have seen competitors put on 30 to 40 pounds within 2 days, because your body's basically in a starvation mode. And that's the biggest thing for, fat gain. You go from 6% body fat to 15% body fat in 2 days, because you are not making your metabolism work correctly.
Absolutely. That's just one of the things that's just so commendable, that like the stuff that you guys put your bodies through is just unbelievable and so inspiring. But one of the things also is, when you're done with the show and maybe you didn't place as good as you thought, or maybe I mean even you did, but then you get all this, sometimes you get criticism like, oh, this needs to be improved, that needs to be improved. How do you deal with that mentally, knowing that, like, I gave it my all this last prep, I did everything I could, and then I still need to be expected to do more the next prep? How do you deal with that mentally? Because I think when you've given something your absolute all, it would be kind of hard to kind of adjust that thinking where, you know what, I'm going to even have to go even harder in the gym next time. How does that work?
So with the sport of bodybuilding, I will say that the older that you get and the longer that you've competed, the better you're going to look. Your muscles and your muscle maturity changes. That's why I'm very glad I started the sport early, because as the older I get, the harder my muscles will look. It's not really, you're always going to be expected from judges, and I think as a competitor standpoint, you're always going to be expected that there's going to be improvements. You never are going to perfect your perfect physique. And that's like, it doesn't matter if I place first or last in a show, I'm always emailing the head judge and being like, here's my photos, give me your feedback at your convenience, and they'll send them back and let me know what they need to improve, or what I need to improve on. And you just take it with a grain of salt and you just work harder. But every competitor knows you will never have the perfect physique. Even those who are stepping on that Olympia stage are always going to want to improve from the previous year. And as long as you're improving each year, then you're doing the best you can in this sport.
And like we were talking about before this podcast, one of the things that females have to deal with a lot more than the males is that you have to balance, looking feminine and not just, just looking absolutely like some of the guys do, where, I mean, it's so much easier for the guys to achieve that look because it's just natural, and the fact that, there aren't those stereotypes of like, you can't do that. So for women, how do you sort of deal with that balance where when you're working out, or maybe when you're doing posing, where you're like, oh my God, my arms could be a little bit smaller, or my legs could maybe not be so toned. How do you deal with that?
So the sport always is going to have a stereotype for females, and I know many of the competitors are going to, relate to me in that aspect, that there's something about female with muscles. Either there's no, oh yeah, they're okay. It's either we love you or we hate you. And at the end of the day, I always tell people, I love what I've been able to do to my body, and it's for me and it's not for anyone else. So seeing my muscles develop and seeing, the growth in them, everything, that's for me. That's not for my husband. That's not for my family. That's not for my fans. That is just for me. And that's how you have to take it, because at the end of the day, I can get nasty DMs. I get emails, you look gross. You should stop competing. You look like a man. Your husband doesn't really love you. All this stuff all the time. But I will say, you have to have thick skin in the sport as a female. A female especially, in order to just take everything with a grain of salt, because I have seen women just get crushed down and just stop competing because of the social media politics in this sport.
That's so sad and just ridiculous, because I've always said to everyone on this show, it's like, I don't get it. You don't when people are improving their lifestyle and getting healthier, this is the only time when you can criticize someone. Like if you have someone who's on drugs or is an alcoholic and they're getting better, you can't say anything to them bad about them. Like, oh my God, you're getting sober. That's gross. Just stuff like that. But when you're building muscle and getting healthier, especially for women and for guys too. I mean, there are guys out there that just look like absolute tanks, and then they get a little comments, but it's not nearly as much. But it's just like people are like, oh my God, you look so gross. It's like they're making their lifestyle so much healthier, and they're able to do stuff that you could only dream of when it comes to being able to lift stuff, and it feels great too. So that's just another thing that I just don't understand at all. But do you find, especially being, a muscular woman, do you find that you have to sort of portray a much nicer image and you have to be a lot nicer to people because there is that stereotype that, people with muscle are going to be not usually the nicest type of people? Do you feel that you have to go out of your way a lot?
Absolutely. I absolutely always, I don't want to say over exaggerate, but I'm always one of those now. And when I was smaller, women would get I have the resting bitch face where I'm just like staring out and I don't notice and I look angry. Now I have to catch myself and always just make sure I'm like smiling and look approachable, because it's one of those things that, oh, she's angry all the time because, she's been working out and she's a bodybuilder. I really do have to kind of change my demeanor to make sure that people know I'm approachable. I've been told, I've been going to the same gym now for 10 years. And, recently we've had a few members join in like, oh, I really want to talk to her, but she looks really like intimidating or unapproachable, so I don't want to talk to her. And then the member's like, no, she's really nice. You just got to talk to her. So there is a stereotype, and I don't think I've ever met like a bitchy or mean female bodybuilder, especially in this sport, because we all have that same stereotype. So we're really nice. Like, we're all really nice and approachable people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But, it just comes along with, you get the stereotypes and you get the rumors, and people they're unsure of how to approach us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. With all the ones that have been in contact with, yes, they're some of the nicest people around for sure. And one of the things that I figured out when I started working out and got a little bit bigger and stronger, one of the things that I didn't like, though, was that people are always asking me to like move their furniture, open pickle jars for them, do all those other stupid things where it's like, oh, Ryan can do it, and then they'll say, oh, hey, Muscles, get over here and do it. Have you found that that's happened to you, and how do you deal with that?
I do, and at this point, it's not really a bad thing. I think because my husband's bigger than me, that most of the time people are asking him to do this stuff. I think the most irritating it gets was I'm like on prep and I'm maybe like 6 or like 4 weeks out, feel like shit, and people are like, well, you have muscles, you can do it. And I'm like, no, really, like I feel like shit and I'm really like depleted and I don't want to. That's when it gets irritating. But believe it or not, I think it's just because I can hide behind my husband and I'm like, oh, can you move this? We're like, well, Kyle can do it. Okay. So that's what I typically do. I just throw it off on him.
That's awesome. So I saw on your last post, you were talking about peak week, and I've actually not had, out of all my guests, I've never talked about peak week before. So could you kind of explain to our audience what peak week is and how, people don't understand is that your body during peak week can change hour to hour, like you said in the post. Could you kind of explain how that happens and just give us a little brief thing about peak week?
Sure. So when a competitor preps, some competitors prep for 12 weeks, some 20, some 30. It just depends on kind of how your body goes. So you're dieting down, you're losing all this body fat, you're depleting all your water, dehydrating. Peak week is basically your end result. It's like the leanest that your body can possibly, you're trying to get the leanest that your body can possibly get. And during that depletion stage, you have a week, you calculate it out from if your show's on a Saturday, your coach will give you a peak week plan starting Sunday or Monday, where you're going to start adding carbs back in, pulling water, because you're trying to get that dry, like as thin as possible, almost like an anatomy book look. You want to look just really like a model in an anatomy book where you can just see all your muscle striations. And there's a really, really precise protocol that you have to follow. So if you mess up a certain day where you're supposed to have carbs maybe like on Wednesday, Thursday, and then like, a tablespoon of fat on Friday, and you don't follow that, it can alter the way that your body's dropping weight, and either you can bloat or retain something. So I always tell people it's a very precise thing, and if you do not get this peak perfect, the way that you step on stage is not going to look correct. Peak week, you have to peak. So when they call you peak week, you're slowly making your way up to your perfect peak physique. It's going to be the best that you're going to look, and it comes down to hours. It doesn't come down to a day. It comes down to, okay, Shannon, you're going to peak between 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock. That's when you're going to step on stage. And it takes a very knowledgeable coach to know how your body will react to that. And that's one of my pet peeves is I see so many people switching coaches year after year. And I'm always like, why? Like, they have to learn how to peak you and how to pull your water. And, there's certain things, like some people, like for me, is I can't pull water. Most people like pull water. If I pull water and I start drying out too much, I start bloating really bad and all my definition goes away. And your body is so sensitive. It's insulin sensitive, salt sensitive, sugar sensitive, so sensitive at that moment because it's so basically starved that any wrong, even like wrong bite can make you bloat or do something wrong. Mm-hmm. So it's a really stressful process.
I just can't imagine what that's like. But moving on to sort of your being a personal trainer, at what point when you started working out, did you want to help out others?
I think the moment I started lifting, I just fell in love with the gym. And then as I started to work, I graduated college. I have a major in finance. I was working in finance, and I worked the corporate world for about 4 years. And the problem is when you're a female bodybuilder and you're in the corporate world, it doesn't mix. You have to get, my suits had to get tailored. Yep. You just look kind of out of place. And the problem was I was losing clients. I was losing accounts. People weren't interested in what I had to say. They were interested in coming to see me with how I looked. Mm-hmm. And after, people asking me to flex or take off my jacket to see my muscle, there's too many sexual harassment charges in that aspect. I just said, you know what? Fitness industry is for me. And, it's really it really took off. I really have a great group of, online clients and personal clients at the gym that I work at. And I love it. I mean, I make my own schedule. It works good with my competing schedule. And that's the main thing is I plan on competing for at least 5-10 more years. So I want a job that I can eat when I need to eat and I can take off time when I need to take off time.
Absolutely. And when you were starting personal training, did you ever have that? I mean, a lot of women still unfortunately have that fear. Instagram has helped out, but they have that fear if they touch one weight, they're just going to Hulk out and turn into Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. When clients come to you and say that, what is your response usually to them?
I always tell them I will make you look how you want to look. Because I've had people that come and see me and meet me in person be like, oh, I do not want to look like you. Not at all. That's gross. I'm like, all right, that's fine. I always tell my clients, however their goal is how I'm going to make them look. So it's just kind of a matter of learning for women to trust the weight. And I also explain to them, I'm like, listen, you can lift as hard as I can, but you're not going to look like me because you're not eating, 200 to 400 grams of protein a day like I am. You got to eat the protein to put on the side. So
yeah. And here, I want to put this stereotype to rest down right here and right now. Could you give us a flex real quick? Because you have been working out. Yeah, she's been working out for like 10 years and doing all the training and nutrition. And look, she doesn't look anything like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. That's what I always say to people. Like, there was a girl in college I was always trying to, get to go to the gym a little bit, just, even start running or doing anything because she was, a little overweight and she wanted to make the change. And I even told her, I was like, the purse that you carry weighs more than those dumbbells, most of those dumbbells at the gym, and you are not getting bigger. So then she finally did it and she lost a lot of weight and she was really grateful. So I just think for everyone, it's honestly just a learning experience where as soon as you go in there, and then another big fear is that there is that stereotype that there's just a bunch of big guys in there that'll be annoying and just,
right.
talk smack to you. But most people don't realize as soon as you walk in there, everyone is so focused on themselves, they don't even know that you exist really. So it's just getting your foot in there. And when it comes to clients as well, what would you say is the biggest excuse that you normally get onto why people don't want to adapt a healthier lifestyle?
Most of them say they don't have time or they're not only going to be able to come to the gym once a week or, it's usually a time management thing. And I tell people, listen, I always tell people like this, you brush your teeth every day. You make time to go to bed every day. You make time, to go take a lunch break. You just have to make time. You make time. You just set aside, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour. All right, on my way home, I'm just going to go right there. I'm not even going to go home. And you just have to set a schedule. It's the only way to keep yourself accountable is you have to. It's accountability on yourself. You know what? No one's going to make you do it. You know what? You're a mom of 5 at home and you want to lose weight. You're going to have to make yourself accountable and just make it into, into your life. Mm-hmm. So that's my biggest thing is just the time management thing is what I hear.
One of my things that I love to ask that people don't really appreciate is when you're a trainer, you can have the perfect nutrition set up for the person, you can have the perfect workouts, and they can do the workouts perfectly. If they don't follow the nutrition, it's not going to matter. And then these people usually come back and complain to you, and you're like, oh, you're not doing your job right. I haven't lost a certain amount of weight. And then you're like, where'd you eat? Oh, well, I had McDonald's or blah, 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 or I had something. How frustrating is that for you, and how do you deal with that?
So when I first started out training, it was so frustrating because I would spend hours doing these meal plans and, making sure to interview them. And have a consult with them and be like, what do you love to eat? I'll make sure that I work it into your diet somehow. And it was so frustrating to me because the same, like you said, the results were not there. And nowadays I make it very clear to my clients that if they're not following and they're not reaching their goals, I'm picky with my clients. If I see that they're not motivated, or they're just wasting my time, I drop them and that's it. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but if you're not I'm putting in the work, then you have to be putting in the work. It's a 50-50. We both have to give and take at the same time. If I'm just giving and you're taking but not giving back, then it doesn't work.
Absolutely. And my favorite question of all to ask is, you kind of put it, or you kind of talked about it earlier when it went to, clothes that you had to wear for when you were an accountant, but how do you deal with the fact that they don't make normally clothes for women with muscles to wear? I mean, it's a huge struggle, and I've always said out there, if there's anyone out there in the audience that knows of a way to make like dresses for muscular women or make like proper wear, that's $1 billion idea right there, and you're going to become the next big thing. But how do you deal with that, and how do you sort of compensate for the fact that you have very limited clothing options?
So most women like myself, leggings become your best friend. They're stretchy. They fit over everything. Luckily for me, it's because I'm a personal trainer. We don't have a dress code, so I'm typically just leggings or stretchy pants and, a comfortable shirt. When I have to go out, that's the thing that makes it, I usually have to get things, tailored to me. Like my wedding dress, I had to go to 30 different stores probably to find that out. It had to be stretchy. Like it is very difficult. I typically just go to the men's section and we'll get like men's smalls or medium t-shirts because, if I'm in the women's section, I have to get a plus size to fit my arms, but then it's just, a gown on me. So that's the only downfall. I will say, if any females listening, I always go to Buckle or American Eagle. Those seem to have the most stretchy material that'll fit the quads. But other than that, I really haven't had any luck with any other good stores.
Yeah, like I said, $1 million idea out there for anyone listening. But now we go to our audience favorite part of the podcast, the questionnaire, the getting to know you part, where we'll ask you about a dozen questions and get your answers and sort of add them up. I like to have some popular answers, and we'll see where you fall in that category. So for our first question, what is your go-to workout song at the moment?
My go-to workout song is actually Africa.
Great song. Oh. Yeah, my mom, they also sang the song Rosanna, and my mom's name is Rosanna, so all my life that was her ringtone on her phone, so that song is just stuck in my head. So, yeah, but Africa, are you talking about the original Toto version or the new version that they play?
Not the remake, the original.
The remake, I hear that on the radio, and I was like, why would you do that? It's like, come on.
Yep.
Exactly. But now, if you could train with any celebrity on the planet, who would it be?
Any celebrity, Sylvester Stallone. He is like, he's my man crush.
He might be the most mind-boggling person when it comes to working out. He's like 75 years old, and the way that he looks right now, it's like, I don't get it, and it pisses me off. I was like, that guy has like the best genetics of all time. I mean, Arnold still looks good, but I mean, Sylvester Stallone and even in that latest Rocky movie, the one that he did before Creed, when he was like 60 and it's like, it wasn't fair. But yeah, I'm glad that we have this is the first, actually, believe it or not, Stallone answer that we've had. The Rock takes up about 80% of our answers, and then we get other ones, but yeah, he's The Rock. So now, if you could train any celebrity on the planet, who would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't really. If I could train anyone, I would probably want to train, like, honestly, it's going to sound bad, but I really would want to train, like, Kim Kardashian just to see, like, just to see how much I could kick her ass before, like, she showed her fans that, like, all this is, like,
that is cosmetic. The fourth time that we've heard that answer on this show, that it's one of the Kardashians, and I'll say this like I've always said every time. I would pay so much money if they made that like a TV show of you just kicking their ass in the gym all the time, because they'll post, like, and this is a huge problem that I talk about too, is with celebrities, they'll post these videos of them doing like 3-pound dumbbell curls, and they're like, oh my god, getting ready for this new big movie that I'm having. And it's like, first of all, that's not the workout that you're doing. Second of all, you're promoting a negative image by making people think that it's that easy to then get in shape and really, work out. But yeah, it's with celebrities, they really got to, I think, be a lot more accountable of like what exactly they do for movies, like all the hard work and training and the nutrition part. One of my favorite was, do you ever watch the show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
So Mac, have you seen the new season?
Yep, it just came out.
Mac got absolutely like shredded for the season, and he had a great Instagram post that I absolutely loved, where he's like, I don't understand why people can't do this. All I did was work out constantly 6 days a week for 9 months, eat no carbs after 7 o'clock, get 9 hours of sleep, and have a personal trainer paid for by the studio. I don't get why anyone can't live this lifestyle. And it's like, thankfully, someone finally like set out there like what these people actually do, instead of people who are like, oh, I can curl 3 pounds and become the next, big thing, which is, a huge thing. So now, moving on, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
Oh, I always have to have, and this sounds so bad, but I have to have sugar-free Jell-O. So I always have to have sugar-free Jell-O if I'm craving. Now, during prep, I will never have it, but off-season, if I'm craving something really sweet and it's not a cheat day, I got to have something.
What flavor is your favorite?
I like any berry flavor, so...
For me, I kind of use the sugar in it, but those ices that you can buy, those little freezies that you can put in the fridge,
Yeah.
I go to town on those because that's just me. But now, what was the last TV show that you binge watched?
Oh, so we just finished Bates Motel.
Oh.
I just watched that finally.
I watched a few episodes and I watched sort of the end of it because I wanted to see like if it leads like right into the cycle. It was actually pretty good. I'm one of those people though where like if it's a movie, I don't want to know like the character's backstory or like why they're evil because that sort of like ruins like how they came to be. But yeah, it was actually really, really good. So what is your favorite TV show though of all time?
My favorite TV show is actually Bob's Burgers. I am a huge Bob's Burgers fan. That is my favorite show. I can watch every episode a million times. Never get tired of it.
That's the first Bob's Burger answer we have. We always have like Friends or like a Seinfeld, which yeah, Bob's Burgers. Yeah, that is actually a great show. So what is one item that you would die to have if it went up for auction?
Like in the world?
Yeah, like if anything that you could have went up for auction, what was one thing that you would want more than anything else?
I probably would want. I would probably want like some sort of like garment or like jewelry piece from The Lord of the Rings. I would want something from there. Something, any of that stuff.
Are you a big Lord of the Rings fan?
I am.
Okay, great. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I'm also a huge Star Wars guy, so that really conflicts in my life, and I don't know what to do about it. But I had one answer from a girl who was like, I want an entire diamond bikini to wear at my next competition, which is made out of one huge diamond. And I was like, well, yeah, that's definitely gonna get the judges' attention. So, I mean, that you'd probably end up winning just on that alone. So now, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Mint chocolate chip.
Mm-hmm. Mine's cookie dough. But what is your favorite fashion trend of all time, and least favorite fashion trend of all time?
I hate joggers. I will say that. I hate joggers. I hate them on girls. I hate them on guys. I think they're stupid. So that's my thing with the fashion trend. I hate the joggers. And leggings are like the best invention ever. I will never give up the legging trend as long as my quads are huge. So that's going to be my fashion trend forever.
I noticed that you have a tattoo. What does your tattoo say?
This is Revelations 2:10.
Oh.
So I was raised Catholic, so I do keep a little bit of my religion on me.
Oh, that's awesome. So what is one thing that you find funny that no one else does?
Well, everyone finds cat videos funny. Yeah. I love cats. So I have a really I guess normal sense of humor. Like I laugh at everything. So
yeah. What is your favorite breed of cat?
I would say a snowshoe just because I have a snowshoe and a domestic short hair, and my snowshoe is gorgeous. So
I am a huge dog person, so like when it comes to cat breeds, all I know, but my favorite's probably got to be Siamese just because I think they look super, super cool. But yeah, I'm a huge dog person, but I appreciate cats. I also love those cat videos where like they get caught in like the ceiling fan and they just go like flying around, and they have 9 lives, and that just amazes me that they're able to recover from all the things that they get into. But absolutely. So what is one thing that people who would meet you in person, who follow you on Instagram, would be surprised to know?
That I'm a cigar aficionado. I love smoking cigars. So I will go and get the Cubans or go and get, I love Camachos. I have so many different flavors, but I love cigars, and I don't typically promote, my cigar smoking just because it is something that people are like, you smoke and you're a bodybuilder, but I make it work. It's something that, that I like to do that's my social relaxing time.
Same here. I mean, when that Cuban ban got lifted, my dad was like one of the first things he did is bought like a dozen of those. And I only do it too, like probably like once every 2 months, or especially like on New Year's Eve or my birthday, then I'll have one. But yeah, people don't realize if you smoke them like that rare, it has little to no effect at all on you.
Right.
And it's just. But do you find, especially one of the things that I find was hard though, is even after you do just smoke it once after like 3 months, the next day it can be hard to train. Have you found that to be a thing?
I have not actually. So I don't know if it's just because I've been smoking since my dad introduced them when I was 18. So I've always had them, and I was a runner at that time when I started smoking them. So maybe my lung capacity developed differently, but yeah, no, I haven't had an issue with it.
I have a short tangent story that I'd like to share with everyone. One of my first cigars that I ever smoked, probably like my third one when I was around 16. I was 17 actually. Me and my friends once every 2 or 3 months we'd go to this park, and then we just smoke one cigar each. But one of my friends brought with one of those big long ones. That is about that big. I smoked the whole thing in 20 minutes.
Oh gosh.
And I didn't realize that you're not supposed to do that. So basically, let's just say that whole night and the next day, like I couldn't even walk in a straight line. Like I was just so dazed with all the nicotine and whatever. So yeah, people, make sure that you smoke responsibly and do not inhale those big ones. So now going on with the questionnaire, what is your spirit animal?
A Black Panther.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Well, my high school mascot was Jaguars, and another fun fact for you people, Panthers are just black Jaguars. But yes, Black Panther, that's a great choice. Mine is a wolf. Now, if you could live in any other time period other than the present, what era would you choose?
I would say the early Egyptian eras. I don't even know the year of that, but that'd be when the pharaohs and everything. But
yeah, I'm a history major, so I'm definitely doing that. I would say probably the 80s, but here's my reasoning, because most people be like, oh, you're a history major, you only say the 80s. Here's the reason. If I went back to an era like that, first of all, I'd probably die by the age of 20 of some disease by getting bit by a snake or something, them not having a cure. And secondly, I'd probably die in a war by the age of like 18, because that's just what everyone did back then. So I was like, I'm pretty content living here in the 80s. They still had a little bit of the technology, and that was nice. So now, if you could have dinner or lunch with any historical figure, who would it be?
Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman? That would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
That would be super, super, super cool. So what is one bad habit that you would like to break?
Overtraining. So it comes back to my body, but I don't know when to take rest days. So overtraining is probably my worst habit. That I preach it, but I don't practice it.
Are there certain ways that you've learned over time to sort of know when your body's had enough?
Yeah, like you'll definitely, especially if you're overtraining, you'll feel it. Like you're just so lethargic after a while, and it's just listening to your body. And now, like my coach literally has it in bold writing. This is your rest day. Take it off. And so, like we've kind of learned to like navigate around it and realize, hey, like your body can only handle so much, and to improve, you need to rest. So.
Yep. And our two final questions on the questionnaire is: if you could go back and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice that you would give her?
To not give a shit what anyone else thinks.
Absolutely. Same here. That's one of the big things that you need to learn in life. Mine too, and obviously, is just be nice to everyone. One thing that I've especially learned from this podcast is that people are generally nice, and all you gotta do is have a smile on, be nice to them, and they're willing to help you out. It's like, as long as you're not a dick to people, you'll do fine in life. It's one of the big things that I've found out. And then lastly, if you could change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, what would it be?
I really wish that there was less politics in it. I wish that everyone would just have an open mind, not look at the name, not look at the background, not look at the coach, and just look at the physique and the aesthetics of that and judge based solely on that.
Mm-hmm. When you were talking about sort of how people had a rough time, like at work, like just admire or just focusing on your muscles and not your personality, and that's probably what happens in everyday life. How do you find that you have adjusted to that, or how was it a struggle at first to sort of realize that people didn't really want to get to know the real you as opposed to your outer physique, and how did you deal with that?
It really was a struggle, and at the time when I started bodybuilding, Instagram wasn't huge. Facebook was, but it was more, most people used it just to promote like their personal lives. And so I really used the social media platforms as a platform to kind of introduce people like, hey, I'm a bodybuilder, but here's my other assets about me that you can learn about. And I use that kind of to just kind of show that there's more. We're just humans that are, that have a little bit of muscle. I think the hardest thing for me is I've adjusted to getting stared at, getting talked while I walk around in normal life. Kyle has not. So we still go out to the grocery store or something, and he does have a problem. If someone says something or stare at me, I have to calm him down. I'm like, listen, it happened, let it go. And I just, I try to be the bigger person. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And I'm still, even though I get, insults thrown at me, keep my mouth shut, and karma will get up to you.
I know, that's just another thing, because you guys are usually the nicest people on the planet. So when people talk to me, that's just so stupid. And I do have to mention your husband is a disabled vet, and that's just, to me, one of the highest honors. Or just respect-wise. What's that been like for you, being married to a disabled vet? How much is that really, broaden your horizons and just showing what hard work and dedication they do for our country, and just how grateful we should be to them?
It was such an eye-opener. So I was not raised in a military family. I didn't have any military affiliation. So when I met Kyle and I moved down and actually lived on Fort Riley with him in the military base for over a year, it was such an eye-opener to see what they go through, what these families have to go through. There were nights or there were weeks where I was, he was working staff duty or CQ or all of that, where he was not home. Thankfully, he was back from deployment when we met, so he never had to go again. But now the challenge is we live in Michigan, which is we have a Selfridge Air Force Base, but it's not really a military state. Mm-hmm. And we have found out a lot of businesses do not give military discounts unless you're active duty. So recently we were just at the zoo. He loves the zoo. We went there. They would not give us a military discount because he was not active duty. And I do not understand why we segregate active duty from disability, because they both do the same job. So it really, I wish that more people would understand like the sacrifices, like what you guys are sleeping in your bed at night. They're in the sand fighting for your freedom and protecting us. And it's such an eye opener. Like, I'm so passionate about it now that I've, married into this lifestyle. I just wish that people would have just a little glimpse of what this, the military community has to go through.
And I've always like to say, people think that bodybuilders in general have tough workouts. Just wait until you see some of those Navy SEAL workouts that they put those guys through. Like, I had one guy at my gym who came in and he's like, yeah, I haven't slept in 72 hours, but I got to get a workout in, because he was a former ex-Navy SEAL. And I was like, what do you have in your, but like, what do you, I just couldn't understand how they do that. And it's just, like, for me, I've always said, like, veterans, they should after they're done with their service, get like a little book, like a little stamp book that says, never have to pay for anything else for the rest of their lives. It's just, I could get into a whole tangent about how disrespectful that zoo was and stuff. It's just, but yeah, I don't want to get into a huge tangent because this is going to derail everything that we've done so far.
I wrote them an email. They're good.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, where can people, other than, your Instagram page, is there other ways that people could contact you, if they want personal training advice or they want to do online training? Are there other ways?
So typically I do all my business acquires everything through my Facebook or my Instagram. So Shannon Seeley, or just Google Shannon Seeley, I'll come up. I'm also a sponsored athlete for Titan Nutrition. So if you go to titannutrition.net, you will see my name on there and some information on me. You can reach me there. I'm also a sponsored athlete for War Room Nutrition. That is my nutrition coach I've been working with for, almost 6 years now. And so I help him out a lot with, getting new clientele for him. I do tell people I do not train competitors. I will never touch a bodybuilding client. I will do prep. I will do people who want to lose weight, change their lifestyle, but I'll never train someone who wants to step on stage. That's not my cup of tea. I don't want that responsibility. But
I've always wondered, because I haven't asked this on the podcast, when it comes to being sponsored and being sponsored by companies, how does that exactly work? Do they just say like, hey, wear our brand, mention us, and then we'll like provide stuff for you? What's the relationship like usually?
Typically for like Titan, especially because they're an up and coming supplement company, they reached out to me, sent me a lot of their products to test out. When I need something, I just kind of reach out to them. And what I do is we have a mutual agreement. I post 2 to 3 times a week about their product. And I have a link on my Instagram page. If you're interested in it, you get a discount. Go ahead and buy it. And then I get a percentage of whatever is bought from people that way. So they pay me that way.
Yeah. I'll definitely leave a link to all that stuff down below, because I really, promoting everything in a health and fitness way. And lastly, one of the last things I like to ask is, there is an obesity crisis in this country in particular. Luckily I'm in Minnesota, which is considered one of, if not the fittest state in the country, because we have so many natural bike paths and just a more active lifestyle. But what are some tips that you would have just for the general population? Like if one person came up to you and said, hey, I really want to lose weight and just adapt a more healthy lifestyle, what's the best piece of advice you could give them in order for them to be successful?
I always say, first things first, drink water, get moving, and think about what you're eating. You have a salad, you have a choice of a salad, or you have a choice of pizza. As much as you want the pizza, you know what you have to do. You have to logically think about your goals and think about what you are putting in your body, because what you're feeling with your body is what's going to reflect on how you look.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And also, just take it easy too in the beginning. All these weight loss shows like Biggest Loser, where these people lose like 120 pounds in like 2 months, and then all of a sudden, were they 3 months later? They've gained 180 pounds back because they didn't learn the ways on how to maintain that weight loss. They just learned how to work out really a lot. So that's another thing. Just make sure that you find ways on how to maintain that. And lastly, Shannon, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the show. It was a great honor and pleasure, and we wish you nothing but the best. Is there any last people or companies that you want to give a shout out to before we wrap it up here?
No, I just thank you everyone for watching, and I'm so excited that I had this opportunity to go ahead and do a podcast with you.
Oh, absolutely. It's my honor, my pleasure. I love promoting. Especially female bodybuilders. You guys sometimes get a bad rap, and there needs to be more light shown on just how much hard work and dedication you guys put into it. And just, you're people too. A lot of people just look at you and they just see the body, and then they don't realize that there's a person behind that. And the more that I can shine a light on that for everyone, just in anything, like whether it's a professor, whether it's musicians, the more light I can shine like that, I'm more than happy to do it. So again, go follow her. I'll leave a link to all that stuff down below. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the Spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.